And first of all, welcome everybody. My name is Joyce Dalgleish, and I have the pleasure of hosting this event, which is brought to you all by the Data Lab and Scottish Government's Data Division, which is where I work. So together, ourselves and the Data Lab have sort of curated and collaboratively built these events, and we have them typically once a month. They're all about highlighting some of the initiatives that are going on in the public sector that use data in an innovative way and that allow us to support positive change in the public sector for our communities and beyond. There's a bit of housekeeping, obviously, before we get started. So I'll do that for you here, and it's all on the slides as well. So key thing is that the event is being recorded, so cameras and microphones are switched off during the presentation. Colleagues at the Data Lab are recording this, and they'll make that available through their YouTube channel, which you can re-watch and share. And I know there's lots of my colleagues in Scottish Government who have a clashing event today who've been asking me about watching this later, but it's also something to share so that there could be something to share with colleagues or little elements of it that are of interest, so please do share widely. In terms of questions, add them into the chat. That's obviously with microphones switched off, that's helpful, but also it gives us a record. So if there's anything we don't get to or anything we want to go and investigate further, we can get back to you. So definitely do use them in the chat. And also maybe when they just spring to mind during the presentation, maybe you don't want to wait till the end and the moment's gone, so put it up and we will work our way through them when we come to that part of the session. And as I say, we'll follow up with you. And we share information and links onto the Data Lab public sector community. Now, if you're here because you've seen this event advertised and you just signed up for it and you're not a member of the community, then would encourage you to join, and we will share details of how to do that in the chat and maybe at the end if I remember. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to colleagues from Glasgow and this event, which is part of Data Lab's community housing theme this month. So there's one more of those to go, and I think Stephen, if you want to put the chat, the link to that event, which is on Thursday. So if this is a topic that interests you, then check out the last event. And the purpose of today's session is to actually showcase and take you through and demonstrate Glasgow's digital twin, which is a really fascinating piece of work that they've been doing in Glasgow and developing. So David McAllister, the Planning Officer at Glasgow City Council, is going to kick us off. So David, I am going to stop sharing my slides and hand over to you to let you kind of load. This is, fingers, all technology presentations, we should all collectively cross our fingers and let you load up I'll stop presenting and let you load up. Let's see how you get on. And David, and somebody in the room can switch their microphone on because.
Oh, sorry, that was
that's quite all right. Listen, even after all these years, there's not a day goes by without reminding somebody to put their microphone on. So, lovely, David. Over to you.
Hi, I'm just a brief introduction. I'm David McAllister, and I'm the lead officer for Glasgow's first forestry and woodland strategy, which was approved in June 2024. My previous policy work in the development plan team has been around housing, industry and business and retail, and I've also got some development management experience. So what's the environmental digital twin? Well, it's a comprehensive interactive source of geospatial data of Glasgow's built and natural environment. So essentially it's an atlas of map data, so it's geographically based and it's visual rather than a table or spreadsheet of information. And we want to establish it basically as a council's single source of map data for planning. So we developed it originally for the first forestry and woodland strategy, although that wasn't an environmental digital twin, wasn't what we set out at the outset. It was just a collection of mapped layers that we thought would be useful for us in developing the forestry and woodland strategy. But together with Maria in the Neighbourhoods Regeneration, Sustainability, Service Development, Innovation team, we wanted all tree and woodland related mapping in a single place to allow us to analyse it. So for example, where the ancient and native woodlands are located, where there's nature networks and tree canopy cover, etc. within the council area. But we added more and more layers, and we quickly realised the wider relevance beyond the forestry and woodland strategy of having all the data in one place and being able to analyse it. So as we advance, we are now at the position we've actually got two versions. We've got an internal and an external version. Although each has a 2D and a 3D version, so arguably there's four versions of it. The 3D version, however, has got fewer layers than the 2D, but the 3D visualisations help make the maps more realistic by adding buildings, 3D buildings through the Glasgow's urban model, and there's also topography. So to access it, at the moment, we've only had a soft launch really in June this year, just to put it out to people to give us comments on what works, what doesn't work, what improvements we could maybe make to it. And in fact, there's a link to the public version in this event flyer, so I would ask you all, if you want to have a look at it, just have a look at it, play about with it, don't worry about it, you won't be able to break it, and provide any comments you have. But on the back of that, we intend to have a more formal public launch later this year. So anyone can use it. Given the broad range of data within the environmental digital twin, when viewed with NPF4 and the development plan and any other supplementary guidance, developers and planning consultants can use it to inform planning applications. So, for instance, they might identify what environmental designations are relevant. Will a tree survey be required? Would a SUD scheme maybe be necessary? Or how accessible is the site by public transport? And you can use it to tailor the design accordingly. Local communities, we think, could also use it to help them inform the local place plans and any other, engage with the authority at public consultations and applications and plans and strategies. So there are benefits of maps over tables. You can quickly visually identify relationships, so it's things like patterns, clusters and outliers that are harder to maybe recognise within tables. And you get quicker access to key data for planning, analysis and public engagement. So factors such as proximity and remoteness, connectedness and gaps and density become clearer, and you can access these ideas faster than might otherwise be possible through tables. It also helps establish what's relevant to a particular area or site and identify patterns and gaps in provision, also constraints, and you can help, as I said, to develop appropriate solutions. So we've got really three types of data within the model, but anything really that can be mapped can be added. But I think they come under three sort of general banners as environmental. So it's things like the tree canopy cover, triple SIs, local nature reserves. But we have social data too, so that's things like the housing land supply, vacant and derelict land supply, town centres, transport infrastructure, schools, allotments, and the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. We've also got buffer zones or catchment areas, so we can map sort of maximum distances from development sites to identify where developer contributions, for example, must be spent, and suitable locations within them. In terms of analysis, you don't analyse them through the environmental digital model itself, or a digital twin. It's through dashboards. And you can have it basically any area you want, but it tends to be things like, for us, it's citywide or wards, or such as Drumchapel, which we'll talk about later, or individual sites. But as I say, any other geographical area that's mapped can be analysed. So a thing that we've done is we're looking at which streets in the city might be suitable for street tree planting. So we're currently working with colleagues to obtain underground infrastructure mapping, and we're going to combine that with any overground infrastructure maps, and that should allow us to identify which streets in the city are potentially capable of having street trees. So we're looking at factors such as pavement widths, the presence of grass verges, and on-street parking. And we put all that together, we think we'll be able to estimate the potential numbers, and when we combine that with other data like the SIMD data, heat maps, etc., we can identify where the multiple benefits of the street trees can be delivered. So ongoing refinement, as I've said, we would appreciate your comments on the environmental and digital twin, and we'll refine it by adding layers and improving any technical and usability issues. We anticipate a more formal launch this year. And that's my introduction, I think. pass over to Maria, who'll take us through a demonstration.
Hi everybody, my name is Maria Quintason. I work for a central team within the NRS department. So we do service development, and we, as the business, so the business come to us with a challenge. This is what we need to do. So we had David, as he said, they wanted something for Woodland, and this has grown up. We get social data. So it's work in progress. Please put your comments. I will show you a couple of bugs that we're aware of. So bear in mind, this is like a sneaky preview. And without much ado, I'm gonna start doing it. So when you click in the link, you will get this splash window. In there, you have a getting started. Very easy to use, to be honest, and very important, credits and some of the copyrights. You can click don't use it again, and you click OK. So the first thing that you will find is the mapping area with the Glasgow boundary. On the left-hand side, there is the address search that can see spinning, and I think there is an issue with our locator, so please don't use that just now. And your normal zoom in, zoom out, your home that goes back to this view. There is the word search address that I will demonstrate later on when we go to Drum Chapel. And the top view, you'll have a list of layers. Like David said, there are lots and lots of layers. I will demo some of them, but please go have a look. Yeah, the comments are very, very welcome. The other side, you will have your legend that will show what layers are included. Okay, so there is a button that says switch it to 3D. So I'm going to switch to 3D very quickly. It might take 1 second to load. David mentioned that the layers were like a bit more restricted, and it's because it's using terrain. So when we're consuming a service, like for example, the flooding, it doesn't draw very well because it's a third-party one. So we have a bit of restriction in there, but you can see that is the whole of Glasgow. And this 3D model was done from LiDAR that the Scottish government provided. Thank you very much, in 2021. And we used the GIS software to create this 3D model. And again, I will go back to it at some point if there is enough time. So a quick overview of the layers. So it starts with the boundaries. We have the words. We have environmental designations. We have the important one, land supplies. So you can see here that this is all vacant and derelict land. We can have the house land supply. And again, you can combine, both of them. Sometimes it can get very messy. So bear in mind that when you're using the data. I'm going to zoom in a little bit in so it's a bit clearer. So one very important thing is you have the legend here. So you can expand the legend right under the layer. On the right-hand side, there's like 3 little dots that allows you to see some of the details, the cell pop-up or zoom to it. Some of the data will be able to allow you to filter, and I will demonstrate that later on. Planning applications, the planning applications, very interesting. I'm going to zoom in. It links to the planning system to our uniform. So this is live data, so everybody knows the e-development portal. So we are able to capture that data and display it here. It might take a little bit to load. I'm just going to leave it loading, and then hopefully it'll come up at some point. Schools, like David said, we have like the schools. Also here I already have the primary. Still loading. I'm going to touch it. Let's see if it loads.
Planning applications take ages.
I'm going to take that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, TV. I'm going to just...
Yeah, it'll take a long time to load because it's such a big layer.
I have it loaded already in the 3D, so I'll demonstrate it later on. So that is now my schools that need to be ticked, Maria. So that is all the schools. Like David said, we managed to get data as well that it will show the distance to the schools. So that you can see the 400, 800, and 1,200 meters distance to the school.
People are asking that when you're clicking on it, it's coming up in nothing's happening. Can you just maybe take them through the boxes that you need to click to get the data to appear?
Oh yes, absolutely. So to get the data, for example, I'm going to start with this one. You can see that there is like one tick box at the top. That will kind of activate the heading, but then you need to go and activate and select the layers that you want to display. Some of them will have, for example, if I go to the schools here, public education establishment, there will be an arrow besides that you can expand, and there is like more options to take. But if, for example, I untick this, although this one is ticked, nothing is going to show. So remember always, you want the schools, and from there you navigate. So that's the schools. Hopefully that's okay for everybody.
Yeah, they've come up saying thank you.
Okay, excellent. SIM data, like David provided, we have the census data, and it shows like more people are towards the city center areas to the outskirts. We have the Scottish index deprivation. I can never pronounce that one, so please someone help me. And like David said, it's like those layers are one on top of the other one, so it can get very messy, but it gives you an idea of where things are. Take that one in. Town centers. I'm going to put the pharmacies, as David told me to do. And again, that's walking distance to pharmacies. So we have pharmacies, we have GP, on and off, like investigate, search the data, and it should give a clear idea of an area, for example, for development, transport. Town centers. Sorry, that will be me, because I was trying to prepare all day. So you can see that I have put lots of data, so I'm gonna take this one and this one out. So those are the SBT routes, bus routes in Glasgow. We can put the bus stops. So it becomes very, very busy. So those are the bus stops and the routes. We have underground stations. And what I'm going to do is get rid of the buses just now because it becomes really, really heavy. I have the underground stations there. And what we can do is, what is the distance to the nearest underground station? Same way for the railways. The trees. This is like how all this started, just to have this data, and you can see that it has it has grown a lot. So this is the Google Canopy data. This was provided by Google. Then it has a date of 2003. Hopefully they provide more data. There's no schedule just now, but hopefully we have native woodland and some tree preservation orders that. Talking to David yesterday, he said that Glasgow, I think, is going to try to increase. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're looking to be a bit more proactive in identifying tree preservation orders. And I think we've got over 100 at the moment, so we're looking to increase that number.
And we have a simplified canopy polygon. I'm conscious of the time. Visitor attractions, for example, we also have visitor attractions. So you can see that everybody wants to go to the city center. Don't come today because the Spider-Man filming is happening, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, totally crazy. And I'm gonna go back to my word search. Are there any questions? It's because, sorry, I don't see the questions. Before I go to the drums.
Hi, Maria. I think there's a few questions here, but I think we're okay just to carry on, and then we can kind of pick them all up together.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a search for a word area. So I will go here, and here is the list of words. I'll go to Drumchapel, click the presenter, and apply. Okay, so that's the Drumchapel area. So what we can do is I am going to load some of the data sets, and then Dave is going to talk about how does that help.
I think for John Chapel, it's been quite interesting. We have we got some money from the Vacant and Derelict Land Fund, and what we thought might be useful was that we look at a net zero master plan for the whole area. And as such, we've kind of been relying on the data sets within the environmental digital twin. And one particular way it's really helped in the conversation moving towards our net zero master plan is with our property colleagues who look at the land in a very different way. It's maybe that they're looking for housing opportunities. And when we met with the property colleagues, we had a discussion around vacant sites, existing vacant sites within John Chapel, and which ones could or couldn't be used for housing development. And then it went on from a really interesting conversation developed because we were able to tell them really quickly which ones were susceptible to flooding, which might have some contamination. And then we went from looking at individual sites to saying, well, where can we cluster sites? So we're looking at clustering the sites to make new opportunities for housing. And then there's also, I'm responsible for leading the police efficiency assessment. So we're now mapping on the places to play layer, so that we link that back to what were the children seeing, where do we want to increase natural play. So the net zero master plan is all about how we look at a place, looking at nature-based solutions first and foremost, and when that goes in, you know, what are the spaces left for housing and other buildings. So that's something that we've been looking at and been using the environmental digital twin quite a lot, because it's really good to have those quick conversations, and it's also good to change some mindsets. So usually it's fastest finger, this is for housing, you know, vacant and derelict land, this is what we're going to use it for housing. And it's not been like that. It's been more about how do we look at this place in a different way. John Chapel's probably suffers from quite a negative perception, and it's about how do we change that place to become different and be a bit more unique. And this is where we're hoping that taking a net zero master plan approach, looking at vacant and derelict land a bit differently, and also leading with the nature-based solutions creates a very different, very place and nature-based John Chapel for the future. And it helps now because David's got the tree layer on, so we use that a lot as well, so we can see quite quickly is there opportunities for more urban forest in the John Chapel area. Where is there alternative energy? So there's a mini hydro scheme that we're looking at to put in there as well. So yeah, I find I'm not a huge data expert by any way, shape or means, but it's been really good to shape conversations with colleagues. That's where I find that it's been the most useful. And I think once we get that kind of social layer on as well, so what do people say about the place? And we're starting that with our police efficiency assessment. So we've got the comments that the children are making and saying that this is the type of play that we want. So we've started to do that on this as well. So I think it adds the kind of another layer of richness if you have that kind of social, what do people think, what are people looking for within an area. And I think that's all we were going to say. So I noticed in some of the earlier questions that yes, it's all done in-house, and it's probably easier to say that, you know, we like all local authorities, we all work in different departments, we all have different ways of doing things. And I think the environmental digital twin is the first step of bringing all of that data into one place with one service and saying, right, if you were, you know, adding to this, can you come and talk to us so that we're aware of any new data sets that are coming in, or if there's data sets that you have that we don't, you know, there's a bit more sharing and a bit more being open with each other about how our mapping system should work within the city. And I think we've made a lot of steps forward, and especially with Maria being such a great expert and can talk the language. I don't talk the language, so it's easy to it's really good to have more technical people involved in this whole process as we're developing the environmental digital twin.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to jump back because it's a couple of things that I will like to show you. And although I started this journey, is my colleague Thanos Daravanis that is on holidays in Greece, probably sweating a lot. It's in the sun. The developer, so I'm just like covering him for today. As you probably noticed, I'm got slow sometimes. The other thing I wanted to show you was when you click on the layer, you will get a pop-up box. Within the pop-up box, you'll see that, for example, this is the Annie's land. I'm gonna clear the word because I think that's causing me a bit of grief. So if I click here, we get a pop-up. Hopefully, it's not hanging. Come on. It's lunchtime in the council, everybody is checking the BBC. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there you go.
I have that one. So that one, for example, is a native equivalent. And all this data is data that is available within our GIS system. So the data is live. What we want is one source of truth. So all our colleagues can see, because sometimes we're not aware what the other department is doing, what parks are doing, what property is doing. Obviously, strategically, like planning needs to know, no offense, everything, but they don't have that visibility. If I get what I wanted to show you, and I think I'm going to see if it works, sorry, in 3D. Sorry, 1 second, because I got the recording pop-up. Okay, so that was the 3D one, but I have one here ready with the planning applications already loaded. And again, this clicks to our uniform system. And if I do an eye, sorry, I'm going to minimize that because I think everybody can see it. All this data is available in the uniform system and is available into the public access system, but it has the beauty that you can see that information within the environmental digital twin. And there is this link that it will open up, hopefully, to public access. Perfect. And there is one that then goes straight to the documents. I'm going to close. I don't want to close that because I'll close everything. The other thing I wanted to show you, hopefully I can do it here in the 3D, is there is these 3 arrows. And what you can do is set filters. So the whole purpose of this is you have some questions, you want some answers. So okay. I can add a filter. And I can say, for example, okay, I want to see the decision. I wanted a unique value. And what this clause does is it gives you the drop down of all the decisions that have been granted. What might be interested is on the refused ones. So if I go to the refuse, and I'm going to tilt my wee map, my load. It would be good if I click the button to do the filter. So it says the filter, and when it refreshes, it will only show you the refused ones. And I think this is very good when you have all this data. If you're a developer, you'll be able to say, oh, there is some vacant land there. I could build something. You bring up the planning applications and you can see, like, for example, that planning application has been refused twice. Why has it been refused twice? And it's get that agile. Yeah, to have information into clicks. Lots of information that are available. I don't know if there are any more questions because I can't see the questions.
You can also analyse using dashboards rather than just this on the environmental digital model. And the dashboard allows you to basically interrogate the data. So for instance, we've got one for vacant and derelict land and tree canopy cover. because I wanted to know how much tree canopy cover there was on vacant derelict land in Glasgow. And it worked out, figures might be wrong, but I think around about 800 hectares of vacant derelict land, and there was something like 600 hectares of that has tree canopy cover to one level or another on it. So what we can deduce from that is, we might think, well, 600 hectares of tree cover on there, that's great. So that means we've got around 200 hectares that we could plant potentially with trees. But the other way of looking at it, the other side of the coin, is that 600 hectares or so of trees that could be under threat from development of that vacant and derelict land. So we pick that up, as I say, through the dashboards. I don't have the technical ability to do that, to be one of the real that does that. So we have to ask for that. And that's maybe something we'll add in a future version of the environmental digital twin.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. Look, this is a journey. As I said, it's started as having a map with all the woodland and tree data to help EVIT to start like the strategy document the strategy to submit it for approval. And everybody that was in that start growing, will put lots of layers. There will be like probably more widgets. Like for example, in the 3D model, we don't have the widgets just now. And the widgets is like the little buttons that are, you can do things with it. So measurement tools will add at some point. You can do 3D measurement tools. As I said, you can do filters.
The shadows button was quite useful.
Yeah,
so you could show shadows as the shadows move around during the day.
Yeah, so if you're looking at creating higher density in the city centre, for example, then the shadow button's really, really useful to say, well, if you're putting, a 29-storey tower here, how's that going to affect the street and the light around, the shadows throughout the day?
That's great. I wonder now if it's maybe worth kind of turning a bit to the time we've got. I'm conscious of our time here, and there are a few questions in the chat. Thank you. That's such a fantastic presentation, and what incredible richness that you've created and where it started from, the idea, where it came from, like, Mighty Oaks and all that, in terms of the digital twin coming from the original tree mapping is quite incredible. And I absolutely loved your point about how this has helped communication. Because I'll just take the liberty of of saying that, all of these data sets, I'm guessing, were all owned by different parts of the council, different teams. So this is an incredible way of using digital and data to break down silos to have a shared understanding. So I think that is in itself quite an amazing outcome.
It was interesting with property because they just came in, they had the vacant sites, and it was housing all the way. And then, just by showing them the different layers from the environmental digital twin, slowly the conversation turned. And we had a much richer conversation about how you create a better place as a result of it.
Well, it can just becomes a common language, doesn't it? Because you can kind of gather around something and share a visual, and how that can sort of become a great leveler, so that you can start having really productive conversations. So I'm going to just kind of run through some of these questions. Some of them will just be yes or no, I'm sure. But Fiona Arthur's asked a question: have you collaborated with Fourth ERA Digital Twin? Now I know you mentioned you were working with lots of the councils, but I don't know if that one in particular is something we're familiar with.
No,
No, it was developed entirely in-house.
Yeah,
so that was in-house, but you haven't collaborated with Fourth ERA. I don't know if it's ERA or ERA. I'm a public servant, so everything's an acronym to me. It might even be ERA. Well, there's maybe one to follow up, unless Fiona's got to add something in. You've said it's in-house already, so Naomi asked that question. Malcolm Price has just put a link into the NERC Digital Solutions Hub. I'm not familiar with that, but other people can have a look. We've solved the layering. To be fair, I did the same thing. I clicked the header. So I thank you for thank you for that in-time real advice. And Bruce, we are recording this. Now, I'm coming to some new questions, which are Leslie's asked a question. Are the data sets used published as open data?
They should be, or most of them they should be, yeah. And there is the Glasgow Data Hub portal. So you just do Glasgow Data Portal, it goes there and they should be there. Some of them might not be because, as I said, this is like a force of nature how it's coming up, you know what I mean? Like, and we wanted, at the beginning, the idea was to have it internally, and Gillian Dick, that some of you will know, was like, no, this needs to be out there. I think in local authorities, there is a fear about sharing data because sometimes, truth enough, we're not 100% sure of the quality of the data. And as well, with the lack of resources, it's like if you publish something and you're going to have 100 phone calls, you know, there is that fear, I think, about showing the data.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you go.
We made sure that on the public-facing version, we don't have the ultra-sensitive stuff on there.
Of course.
In-house only. And I think it's just about, you know, making it accessible, sharing our learning. I think is really important, and that it's not been an easy process. I think it's been quite difficult to track down all of the data sets that exist across all the numerous services. So yeah, and as we've said, it's work in progress.
Of course, and this is, you know, I think that is, you know, with my own sort of personal interest, you know, and of being part of this collaboration of the Data Lab and running these events, is that some of the stuff that's coming through that we share through this, it's not perfect, it's not finished. I mean, what is in life, to be fair? You know, so, but it's sharing at an early stage, and then all the people on this call today, you know, can sort of know it's there, and you know, we don't have to hold on to everything till it's perfect. And I agree, Maria, that getting comfortable with open data is a journey. And you know, and there will be some things that will never, quite rightly, never be released as open data because it is personal sensitive data. But we try and get as much out there because then people can. It's more empowering to have more data out there. But for organisations, I, in a previous role, worked on an open data development, and you know, yeah, we had to take the organisation a journey to do that, and now they publish a lot, so you know, that's wonderful. So I was going to say, will the link be mailed us individually? I suspect so. But if people who have attended for the link to, I think there's a follow-up email that the Data Lab do, and that should have the link in, and Stephen can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Oh, here's a question from Maureen. Maureen McEwen, is information and data sets automatically updated from original sources? But that's how that's pulled in. I don't know if, Maria, is that one for you on the sort of more technical side?
Yes, that will be one for me. So yes, this data is looking at live data. And again, our colleagues, you know, like updating continuously, it's like the planning applications. Some of the data is not ours, like the flooding one and the cold data that comes from a service. So I don't know how often, you know, it's updated, but yes, our data is the data that is in use.
Great, that's great. And Philippa Vigano has asked a question: can it be used for scenario planning? Like, well, David, was for you. Like, what happens when happens or changes if we plant trees in a particular location?
I think it probably could be used for scenario planning. It's not something I think we've done as yet, but it's something we'll be doing in the future. We'd maybe look to combine it with other data sets and be able to calculate things like biomass, and from that calculate how much carbon sequestration, for example, the trees in Glasgow or any particular area in Glasgow might be able to contribute towards meeting the targets, the climate change targets.
Well, I know you didn't.
About.
Sorry, what was that, David? I spoke over you. Apologies.
That's a sort of scenario or use of the data with other data sets that we are thinking of.
I think it would be useful as well if we looked at. We get a lot of feedback from different communities around localised flooding, so that would be another scenario that we'd be keen to look at and to say, well, what happens if we introduce X amount of rain gardens in this part of the city? Does that reduce the localised flooding, get rid of it altogether? You know, so how many rain gardens for example, would we need to introduce? So it's things like that. We're really hopeful that we can start to look at the scenarios and just build it up as we go along. Certainly from my perspective, the police efficiency assessment, we did it on a story map, and that was hugely well received, especially with the elected members. So then I was saying, well, we'll add it into the digital twin. So that's been good as well, because it's given that kind of the story of where children go around the city, what they do, where they spend time, and hopefully we can continually update that, as well as run some scenarios with the different age groups. That might be possible, might not be possible.
We'll find out. And I think that's actually a lovely, well, one, that's a new term I'd never heard before, rain garden. Sounds very pretty, and highly practical, clearly. That idea using kind of that story mapping and storytelling, and sort of from, I suppose, a service design perspective is, and so that's really interesting how you're bringing together something very technical, and then and also with something that almost might, that sort of design sensibility into that is amazing. Now, I know you didn't think you were coming on this call to do extra homework, but colleagues have posted in the chat. So Philippa has put in a link there, which I think she put, oh sorry, it's maybe Fiona. There's a couple of links there from Stirling University, which is where the 4th ERA is. So maybe some connections there. And Mark McLaughlin's asked a question: is there any plans to include a business data set to support economic business development, like clusters of businesses in key sectors driving innovation? Is that something that's kind of on the cards, or does it come into what data is actually available?
I think it's what data is available, and we're not sure. We do have our team that looks at economic development across the city, and I think we'll need to go and interrogate them to see what they have, and if, you know, can we have access to it, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And also you've said, I mean, it's obviously you've already given an example of how it's useful to business, because looking at, oh, there's some land that looks empty. I'm a developer, I could be interested in that. But actually, because you showed us the planning and the history, that could also maybe saved, maybe I'm being optimistic here, but maybe saves on workload if somebody sees that a planning application being rejected and it's maybe not the right area for them. So, well, I was going to say, Mark, you've asked that question. If you've got any special requests about data, or know of good data that could be brought into the digital twin, then I mean, here's your opportunity. So I'm just going to scroll through. Here's one. Oh, no, it's just Malcolm. Have you been able to use this? This is sorry, I'm having to peer at my screen. Apologies. Have you been able to use this in conjunction with things like 20-minute neighbourhoods? Similarly, things about how far you can get in 30 minutes using public transport.
Yes is the quick answer, but we haven't not in enough detail yet. So we've got our buffer zone, so we can tell how far it is to GP surgeries, schools, bus stops, things like that. So, but it's how we tie that all together, so it becomes more easy on the eye, because you've seen how much data comes in and it gets really, really busy. So I would think, for me, leading on that work for the Living Well locally, I would like to see a kind of a clearer kind of layer coming in the future. So we're still working on that at the moment, but hopefully, marry it up with a bit of a story as well. That would be ideal.
Great. Now we've got one more question, I think the last question here, and I'm going to make this the last one. And Stelios has asked a question, maybe a philosophical question, I don't know. Is the GIS itself considered a digital twin, or is it the fact that you've done calculated layers, areas within X distance of an underground station? Just trying to understand the difference between a GIS database and a digital twin of a city. Now, I don't know if that's like a 1-minute answer, or this is a whole other 40-minute conversation. I don't know.
Okay,
Could we make it a 1-minute answer?
I'll make it a 1-minute answer. Let's say the foundations of any digital twin will be your spatial data, and that will be your GIS. We will be doing more things because we're changing it. And yeah, we could have hours and coffees and probably ended up in the pub, and discussing what is a digital twin. There are 2 officers, including myself, that are going to go to the Eurocities digital twin decision-based thinking approach, something like that. So hopefully we'll have a better idea afterwards. But I think GIS, yes, your foundation. Your digital twin is how you use the data. It doesn't need to be one digital twin. We call it environmental digital twin. There could be a business digital twin. I think the important thing is to have the capability to add the layers that you require. because again, a planning officer will have a total different need than a housing officer. That the city property that want to sell the land, that me, my little, I live by the green, close to the Clyde, thinking like, oh my God, there's gonna be a storm. I'm gonna get, like rainwater, or my SATs are not working. You know what I mean? That kind of thing, I think, is very important to have.
Yeah. I think we're looking at it at the moment is really an atlas of all the data sets that we've got, so you can obviously go in, pick out the data sets that you want to compare and analyse and use it that way. So it's maybe strictly not a digital twin.
Well, this sounds like could be
a
long pub conversation, I think.
Yes.
So for those, I remember this is like, we could have like a virtual bar conversation here. Yeah. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and so I don't want to end this without saying a huge thank you to the team. Edva, you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself. I'm sorry. Okay. We just kind of launched straight into it. So thank you for colleagues there, and thank you for everybody who's come along today. I just want to say a couple of words of close, which obviously Stephen's answered the question in the chat that the people who are registered here will receive a link to the recording, which will be in a couple of days when we get that uploaded. I will add this link to the link to the public sector community on the Data Lab. Now, the public sector community, which Stephen's got the link there, and I've got a QR code too. So we've got over 1,300 members, lots of people in Scotland and many beyond. Not everybody works in the public sector, but that's the point. It's people who are interested in the public sector. So we do want this to be, it's just people who are interested in public sector data. And I'd like to, for the people that are on here, I'd like you to think of this as maybe an opportunity to have a virtual notice board, so that if you're looking for ideas, looking for requests, looking for collaborators, you've got things going on, events going, please use that, because not only have you got the membership of that group, but you've also got the whole of the Data Lab community team behind who can sort of amplify things that you're looking for. And they have, if you've not signed up, please do, because they have a great newsletter that goes out every week with lots of different events. I mean, I mentioned we posted about the other housing event we've got coming up, so there's lots there. Our next event is actually is going to be in September, and that is going to be all about financial data. And there's been some really interesting work done by Smart Data Foundry, and I'd really love to see you there. And I say that's the 23rd of September. So that QR and the code and the link will take you. Oh, I see that we've got both things. You can join the community, and not only do you can join the community, and obviously you're going to join a public sector community, but there's also loads of other ones. So all the geospatial interested folk, there's a massive community of geospatial people. So go join them. I see there's some other tips that Mike Gills mentioned about speaking to Geovation, Ordnance Survey, Registered Scotland, loads of stuff, and Stephen has put up the next event. So for me, that's it. It's 10 to 2, so it's our finishing time. Thank you all so much for coming along, and thank you again to Glasgow for sharing this incredible piece of work. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.